you got yourselves another day at the MLB Deeper Dive. We are going to talk to you about all the top pitchers, some low-owned pitchers, all the top stacks, and some low-owned stacks you can play for yourself in the world of MLB DFS today. I am Chris Spags, joined by a man I've been on here all week. I have some changing faces, some changing names on the show. This one you can know and love every single day. Terry McBride. How are you doing, Terry?
Doing pretty well, buddy. It's a surprise to be on with you today. It was originally slated for a no-show day, but got the call about 15 minutes ago, got the tap, and glad to be here.
Always ready, like an arm in the bullpen, ready to go. And another man, my first show with today. So as part of my, indoctrination of doing a show with this man, I'm going to try to say his last name, Max Smotritskiy. Is that even close, Max?
That's very close. I'm super proud.
What's the actual pronunciation, just so I know?
Smotritskiy.
Smotritskiy. Okay, so I like it. I feel like it's kind of got a baseball name, a little bit of Justin Smoke in there.
Yeah, not bad.
Not bad at all. We appreciate you guys for being here today. So we are going to talk, as I mentioned, about the top pitchers, all the top stacks, all the things you need to know today. At the halfway point of the show, we'll do a little money time, give away the top 5 owned plays on Draftkings and Fanduel according to Awesemo today. And one other free thing for you guys, it's going to be important to build some lineups. So you can just jump into MLB DFS without spending a single cent today on Awesemo.com by using the free MLB player projections as our free premium tool of the day today. So go check that out on the site. And this show would not be possible today if it weren't thanks to OddsShopper, our sister site at Awesemo, which is providing you one of the biggest edges in sports betting. It's just shopping for the best lines out there. Betting lines change by the minute, can vary greatly depending upon which books you're using. That's why it's important to use Awesemo's OddsShopper to find the best line available on the game or player prop you're betting on and give you that edge to beat the house. So head on over to OddsShopper.awesemo.com where we compile the best bets available for game lines, player props, player and team futures, and all of them are updated in real time. But some of them, for all the other sports, I think not for MLB yet, have the win percentage and ROI percentage tools on there. Great ways to just find some edges for yourself in the player prop markets. So go check that out right now at OddsShopper.awesemo.com. Guys, let's talk a little slate overview. I think we have 2 games that have some weather issues potentially. So Max, I'll ask you here first about the slate, what you're thinking about. And I guess, do you have any concerns for the Phillies and Cardinals game or the Angels and Texas game?
Well, the Texas game, they can close the roof, right? So It shouldn't really matter there. Just matters for the bats where we don't like them as much when the roof is closed. But the other game was seemingly okay by the time they were going to start. So I think that's fine as well.
Terry, sorry, go ahead.
Just a slate overview. Like we just have one team that seems like it's going to be overwhelming chalk. So that's going to be really fun to go over some low-owned options.
Yes, another chalk Yankees day today that we'll talk about. Good amount of Padres as well, but we'll get into all that here. And Terry, any overview thoughts for you, or any weather concern thoughts as well? Because I know people playing MLB DFS, there is always a concern. They see that red radar anywhere on their favorite MLB sites.
Yeah, I mean, keep an eye on that St. Louis game, but I'm one to ride it right down to the wire unless we get actual, it is pouring rain, there's no way in hell they're playing this baseball game today kind of news. I usually am going to stick with the game, particularly with the ability to swap guys out if we get information in time. So, yeah, I'm okay with it. I think we're going to be in the clear with that one. There are some bats that I like in that game, so I'm hoping it plays, but I'm not really sweating the weather too much. I'll keep an eye on it, though.
Yeah, so we will update if anything changes throughout the show, obviously, but make sure you are staying tuned to our news guide in the premium Slack as well, part of the Awesemo Plus packages, even the Express packages for just $1 a week on there. You get access to the premium Slack that adds a lot of value to any sport you're doing. So make sure to check that out at awesemo.com/join as well. Let's talk about the top pitchers here. And it does seem like a slate where, once again, we have a stud pitcher up top that is going to look a lot of really good in a way that's going to be hard to nickel and dime too much. But Tyler Glass now looking like the chalk of the day, a player who on the year has been striking out guys at an incredible rate for Tampa Bay. 39% K rate for him. The swing strike rate also on the upswing with a 15% swing strike rate. Chase rate for him at 30%. It's pretty fine for the most part. XFIP too, 2.61. So that's not a bad number for him. Terry, how are you feeling about Glass now today with, again, very, very chalky ownership no matter what site you're playing on, but a really good matchup going against Oakland. 6 guys that strike out above league average in their lineup.
Yeah, a ton of strikeouts in that lineup for them today, and it's some of their best hitters are heavy strikeout guys. Olsen is a heavy strikeout guy. Even Chapman, as good a hitter as he is, he's a pretty heavy strikeout guy. So the heart of the order strikes out quite a bit. He's pitching great, like you said, 39.7% strikeout rate this year, a 2.44 xFIP, 0.75 WHIP is outstanding. So he's been really, really on his game. The price is up, 10.8. You're paying full freight for him on FanDuel, 10.3 on DK, a little bit more affordable, I guess, but everybody's on him. It's a spot where you're going to have to be there, I think, tonight, but it's just a matter of, are you going to the field, over the field, or under the field? Typically, I'm inclined on Fanduel, where you're getting one of these guys to go under the field a little when a guy's this chalky and there are that many other options. Looking at the top starters board, he does stand out at the top, but it's only a few percentage points to the next few guys. And then it's everybody else at those same percentage points, minuscule differences between, let's say, the second ranked guy and like the 8th ranked guy. So I'd like to get to capture some of that spread, some of that range of outcomes there. If it costs me a few shares of Glasnow, I think I'm willing to do it. But he is by far the best option on the slate in terms of raw points projection and raw pitching, just what he should do in this matchup.
Max, what's your confidence level here with Tyler Glasnow? And I guess the one thing you can point to for Oakland, as Terry mentioned, they do have a lot of strikeouts in their lineup, but they also do have a lot of guys with power, 225 aggregate ISO in their projected lineup today going against Glasnow. And Glasnow, for the most part, has avoided power, just a 32% hard contact rate over the last season. But is there any sort of issues you see going heavy on Glasnow today, given the fact that anywhere you look is going to put him as a top pitcher in simulations or just as a projection level?
Yeah, I mean, ownership is the big thing for me. The only thing I saw that was a red flag was that he gave up 4 barrels in his last start, which is kind of a lot. And, he only pitched 6 or 7 innings. So maybe people are trying to figure out what he's doing. Maybe he tipped his pitches a little bit. Who knows? 4 barrels was definitely a ton. So just playing the ownership here and taking a little bit of leverage on cheaper guys makes a little bit of sense to me, just because most of the stacks that I really like are expensive. So it's tough to find a really cheap stack where you can play Glasnow and another high projected pitcher.
Yeah, that does seem to be the way it's going to be going. And some of the value options, it does seem like there's one value option that's bubbling a lot on the top pitchers tool. And maybe this is part of Max's strategy for the day. So I'll go to you first here. But Alex Cobb has an 18% chance of being the top pitcher, according to Awesemo, 18.4% chance of being the top value pitcher as well. And his numbers have started to improve for the shorter term sample size. I guess, the weather in this game, if the roof is closed, going to be a benefit to him as well. But the numbers for Cobb have started to look a little bit better in the shorter term over the last season, a 3.8 xFIP. It does seem like the strikeouts should be better than they are at a 20% K rate, limiting power pretty well, just a 3% home run rate. Is Alex Cobb one of the guys, Max, that you're looking at as a value play today, just to get away from some of the chalk stud ownership?
Yeah, absolutely. He got really unlucky in his last starts. His first 2 starts were really good. And then he got BABIP last start. Only gave up 2 hard hits and gave up 5 runs somehow. There were 3 walks, and it's Houston. So they're really patient, don't strike out much. Just a tough start for him. But I'm expecting a really good start in Texas versus a lineup with a bunch of young hitters that strike out a lot and chase a lot. So I really love Cobb here for upside.
Terry, how are you feeling about Cobb? I guess on FanDuel, maybe not quite the same situation there, where sometimes the value pitchers don't make a ton of sense to go to, but Cobb certainly is going to offer some ability to get all the bats you want, I suppose, if you're playing him on FanDuel. Is he an option on FanDuel, or are you considering him more on DK today?
I would probably be more into it on DK, where you do need to get to 2 of these guys. He does project well for me, no doubt about it. This is the strikeout matchup of strikeout matchups in the league. We've talked about it pretty much every time Texas has come up. They just swing and miss quite a bit. He's striking out guys at a 30.9% clip this year. I just don't trust it yet. Cobb is a pitcher that I've targeted over the years with bats. Going back to last year, 52 innings, he was only a 16.8% strikeout rate. Year before, only 12 innings, but a 13.3. We saw him higher, a little bit above league average back in earlier parts of his career. I just don't fully trust the renaissance at 30.9% over 14 innings yet. It's not to say that I'm going to Texas bats, but I am a little hesitant, particularly on the one pitcher site, to fully trust the projection. It's right there. The price is right. There are just a couple other guys in that price tier that I think I would rather get to and maybe move some pieces around. So it is on the board. I'll have some. I'm just not comfortable with it. So the answer to how I feel is uncomfortable.
Okay, that's reasonable. No reason to feel too differently about Alex Cobb, but perhaps some signs of life here that are worth buying in on today. Another value, I guess a straight value pitcher. I was going to say value adjacent, but he's very cheap on DraftKings as an SP2. Vince Velasquez in that weather concern game, and I guess we could hit on this up top in the hopes that the game does play. But Velasquez, a guy who's had a lot of strikeouts, going against the lineup for St. Louis that's got 5 guys that strike out above league average, and Velasquez's price on DraftKings, I do think jumps out. Velasquez Didn't pitch that deeply at Coors, which I think must have been just more of a Coors thing for him that last start, but did show the strikeout ability that's been there for him over the last season, about a 30% K rate. The other number is not the best, a 1.7 whip allowed. I do think Velasquez, to me, if this game does play weather-wise, Max, I feel like he's another value pitcher that you can go to and hope to get some strikeout upside, even though he has not pitched that deep into games this season or over the last season and change, just over 3 innings and a little bit more than that per start.
Yeah, this is the one where I'm just going to take a stand and not play this guy. Only threw 67 pitches last start, so that's like his high. Started the year in the bullpen. They've just been working him back a little bit. He does give up some walks. There is a good swinging strike percentage here, but St. Louis is a good lineup. Like, they have good professional hitters. I'm just not interested in his ownership. He's also projected to be around 20% owned. So I'll just take a shot at some lower owned guys.
Terry, how are you feeling about Vince Velasquez? I'm going to assume it's the same thing as Alex Cobb on Fanduel, where you're probably not going this cheap in the hopes of unearthing a big day, but still a decent projection on him. So I'll ask the question on Fanduel. Is he in play at all? And how are you feeling about him on DraftKings as an SP2?
Yeah, I'm kind of with Max on this one. Velasquez is just a guy that I make every effort to avoid, even at these prices. 6,500, yeah, he's definitely on the board as an SP2 on DK if you want to use him. There is strikeout upside here. The issue with him is he's got those short outings. That's the habit throughout his entire career, right? I was just looking while you guys were talking on Fangraphs. His season with the biggest sample was 146 and 2/3 innings over 30 starts in 2018. That's under 5 innings per start in his longest season. Every other season, the average is shorter than that. So this guy does not make 5 innings most starts. He's too wild. Anybody that he does strike out, he's got a really high percentage chance of erasing those strikeouts by allowing runs and just being a mediocre pitcher, really. He just puts too many guys on base. It's risky. I don't know that there's enough upside. You're getting a lot of benefit out of that salary on DK, which is the major upside to it. So there are strikeouts. There is salary savings. That's the only real appeal here for me. I'm just not a Vince Velasquez guy.
Okay, but yeah, so a lot of good cases to be made against a chalk pitcher today. And I think if you look at the numbers, it's certainly going to tell one story, but it does seem like the points that Max and Terry are raising here, just not able to pitch that deep into games. He has to get strikeouts and work fast or be under control for one star, and it does seem has not been something he's been the best at. So I don't mind being with the field on him, but I get why these guys might not want to go there at all. One guy who is going to be an interesting play on Fanduel, the highest priced pitcher on Fanduel, bit of a surprise for Carlos Rodon on DraftKings, a bit more reasonable price tag going against Detroit, only 3 implied runs for them today. And Rodon's a guy I would definitely prefer to get to Tyler Glass now, but Top Pitchers Tool does have Rodon having the second highest odds of being a top pitcher on today's slate. So Max, where are you landing with him, given the fact that he's facing Detroit, we know is an inept hitting team for the most part. And Rodon's strikeout numbers have been good. His velocity has been up as well over the last season and change. So lots of positive things to look at for Rodon.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a great play today. The weather's also really cold, so that's great for pitching. I really don't see any red flags. The only thing that he has a 110 BABIP so far this year, which is bound to rise. That's kind of a joke number. So that's the only thing. But Detroit's definitely a great spot for strikeouts. He's another guy that doesn't really go deep in games. There's just injury history here, so I just don't think they want him to throw like 110 pitches. Definitely a step down from Glass now, but another good spot.
Terry, how are you feeling about Rodon here? And would you agree? I think we're going to be all on the same page that Rodon is a step down from Glass now, and on Fanduel especially, where you're paying that premium price tag, you want your guy to go deep and have better strikeout stuff, I would think. So Rodon to me looks better on DraftKings and Fanduel, but how are you feeling about him where maybe you could pay up to be contrarian, I guess, going against a weak Detroit team?
Yeah, I'll probably end up with some. It's just the price tag that really gets me on Fanduel, 11K. Despite a great matchup against the Tigers, I was just looking at their current year strikeout numbers against lefties. Bottom of the league, 33.5% strikeout rate against lefties. Oh, ouch. Their team ISO against lefties so far this year, 0.078. They've hit 2 home runs against lefties this year. Now, they're among the smaller samples so far in the league for having faced lefties, but it's not the total bottom, and those are really bad numbers. So it's targetable for sure. They've been better against lefties back through the start of 2019, but this is not the team that we remember hitting lefties well. It's a different lineup. So I'm not worried about Rodon in terms of his upside here, in terms of his ability to get through this lineup. It's just a point per dollar thing on Fanduel. I think there's more upside to him at 98 on DK for sure, but I do think he could have a very nice start here.
Hey, Max, I know you mentioned some stuff about Rodon and your concerns with him being a little bit unlucky to start the year with the BABIP numbers. And that's the same case going back to last season as well, just a .190 BABIP going back to 2020. And the XFIP for him is a 4.7 XFIP, which just gives me some concern because Detroit doesn't hit well, but they do get on base fairly well against lefties. You have Nico Goodrum over a 345 batting average, 400 on base percentage against lefties. Cabrera gets on base 424 against lefties. Ramos 390 on base percentage against lefties. Even Heimer Candelario gets on 360 on base. Like, I have some concern that Rodon maybe not be as good, might not be as good as some of the numbers that we're looking at, the strikeout numbers and all of that. How much would you worry about a guy with an XFIP like that, who's also been getting lucky on the batting average on balls in play?
Yeah, I mean, regression is going to strike eventually. Like, there's no statistics just don't pan out with this way where you can sustain a BABIP like that for an entire season. So you never know when it's going to strike. It will eventually, like we saw Corbin Burns get burned a couple days ago, where he was overwhelmingly chalky. And, his BABIP was also in the hundreds. And he just gave up a bunch of unlucky hits, bunch of walks, and that's it. That ruins your day. So definitely could strike. And I know Terry mentioned Detroit sucks versus lefties this year. But in their careers, like Ramos, Scope, Jones, Cabrera, they all hit lefties better than righties. So that's a concern as well.
Yeah, definitely something to point to for Rodon, especially on Fanduel where you are paying that price tag and not playing Tyler Glass now. I would definitely have some concerns going heavy Rodon on there. And on DraftKings, you can make the case a little bit more, but very lofty ownership for him, 35% ownership expected today for him. And according to the top pitchers tool, he does have a 19% chance of getting there, but you're still looking about 2x the ownership of his actual chance of being the top pitcher on DraftKings. And I would have some concern there too. Let's keep going through some of these other guys. And I guess, Terry, I'll throw to you here to ask if there's any pitcher who jumps out meaningfully, because I think there are a few guys we could hit on, the Domingo Germans of the world, that I'd be curious to talk about, not just because you're a Yankees fan and I can then point to the Yankees being bad again in one more situation. But Terry, what other pitchers are you getting to meaningfully on FanDuel?
Thank you for not making me talk about my bad team and the alleged domestic abuser.
Hey, the stat got home runs yesterday, though. That's what matters for you.
It's not alleged, by the way.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I guess I don't have to say
there were witnesses.
But these do not reflect the opinions of Awesemo.com. Anyway, I'd much rather talk about Herman Marquez on the road in San Francisco. I get a great projection for him. One of my favorite pitchers on the board, Pitchers Park, taking on a lineup that I don't think is a great lineup here. So I think there's a really good opportunity for him to put up a nice start for us. I like the price on FanDuel. Just a lot to like about that spot. I would prefer if he was taking on his own lineup as a righty against that Colorado lineup. I don't love the matchup on the other side for Alex Wood, but Rockies on the road also always leads me to the opposing pitcher. So I might even throw a couple shares of Alex Wood and just take the late night game on both sides. But for me, it's all about Marquez. 22.8% strikeout rate this year. He was 21.2 last year, 24.3 the year before. He's a little bit above league average, around league average, but he's a good pitcher. 402 xFIP this year. Put a few too many guys on base this year. Walked a few too many in his 28 innings. But he's a pitcher that I trust. Typically pitches pretty well on the road. Also pitches well at Coors. I think 78,500 on DK is a pretty nice bargain for him. It is a Giants lineup that doesn't strike out a ton in general. This year against righties, if I can find it real quick, they are further up the board than I thought. 28.4% strikeout rate. So not very good in preventing the strikeout against righties. That's actually second worst in the league now that I have it sorted in the column. So they've been striking out a lot more than their reputation is against righties so far this year. So adds to the appeal for Marquez.
Max, I saw you nodding along there to the call on Herman Marquez. See a guy that you're seeing yourself get to a good amount on DraftKings?
Yeah, the guy just in the last two starts just looked really good. 14% swinging strike rate and then a 24% swinging strike rate. Throwing way more sliders right now. Throwing the slider at 30%. I love that for strikeout upside. And yeah, I mean, the venue looks great for him. I feel like the ownership may be a little bit higher than we want, but I don't really care. I love the spot for him. Way too cheap. And even Alex Wood, I know Terry mentioned that he wasn't that high on him. I actually think he's way underpriced for where he is as well. Very nice swinging strike rate for him as well. Kind of like crafty lefty-ish now, where he doesn't throw 95 anymore. But I don't think it matters in this matchup. The breaking stuff looks great. Yeah, I love both sides of this matchup.
Yeah, Alex Wood, I think, jumped out to me more than Marquez. And I get, Marquez pitching anywhere that's not Coors is going to be an upgrade, though. San Francisco's Park, we've talked about it on a few of these shows recently, giving up a little more power since they adjusted the dimensions there over the last season and plus. But Wood, the numbers for me since 2020 have jumped out. Like he's making strides across every category in a way that I think is noteworthy. Up down to a 232 batting average from a 265 going back to 2019. K rate's up to just shy of 25% from a 21.7% K rate. Home runs down to just league average 2.9%, and the swinging strike rate up to 13.2 from 11.8%. There are positive signs here. Velocity too, up to 91 from 90 and change going back to 2019. I think Wood's made some improvements here and going against a Colorado team with only 3.1 implied runs, 5 guys that strike at above league average. I think Wood, to me, is going to be pretty decently owned on DraftKings, about 28%. But he's one guy I'm pretty comfortable getting with, where we've talked about a lot of these chalky guys. Wood, I'm okay getting right there a little bit above it. Let's keep going through here. And I guess, Sarah, do you have any thoughts on Wood? I know you kind of brushed him off here, but now Max and I pushed back, and now you have to justify why you hate Alex Wood.
While you were talking about him, I just pulled it up in StatCast to take a look if I could find anything specific. I always like to find a specific indicator for, all right, this guy made this specific discernible change in his repertoire, et cetera, in how he throws pitches, and it's resulting in these things that you're talking about. And yeah, everything looks great. He's sitting 85th percentile in barrels allowed, 72nd percentile in whiffs, 67th percentile in strikeout rate, 95th percentile in xERA and xWOBA. So he's pitching very, very well. And it looks like the main change he made, he was throwing 20% sliders last year, and he's up to 39% this year. Yep. Took his changeup down to 18%, and he's throwing just those 3 pitches. Took his curveball out of the equation entirely. Looks like it's making a difference for him. So based on that, and based on having a specific thing that he did differently, I kind of like it. I kind of am a little interested here. So he doesn't project out well, but it's just because my model maybe hasn't caught up to it yet. So I'm interested. Maybe I'll poke around the edges and see what I get to it with him now.
He's one of those guys in the top stacks tool. It doesn't look great. So Terry is not alone in that sentiment where, according to Alex, he has about a 10.5% chance of being a top pitcher on the day compared to 28% ownership on DK. But that is looking at the longer term sample size, which is, for the most part in MLB DFS, how you are going to make your money is not getting caught up in, BVP type stats, those limited sample size things. But I think Wood has made enough strides here. I'd be willing to buy in today and hope to not be wrong. Max, I'll ask you the question I asked Terry. Is there anybody else who stands out to you meaningfully amidst all of these guys where it's kind of a flat pitching slate below the guys that we talked about? I guess you can make a case for a Steven Matz, maybe a Kyle Hendricks, but do any of those guys we haven't hit on jump out to you?
Yeah, no, I kind of hate everybody else in the 8K and 7K range. If you want to jump down to like all the way to 5.9K, I don't mind playing a Karamer against a Chalky Yankee stack. Just because there's strikeouts here. He's been throwing more curveballs, having more success in his last 2 starts. He already faced the Yankees once, and he didn't do too badly against them. Has a ton of ground balls versus righties, and Yankees lineup is like chock full of righties right now. So yeah, I don't mind that play as an ownership play and a leverage play.
Yeah. Do you agree at all, Terry? Would you want to go that direction?
I don't know that I'd be going all that far down the list. I agree with what he's saying. Don't get me wrong. He projects in like the middle of my board, right? So it's not, I have the bulk of pitchers are projected for garbage days. I totally agree with Max that it's just after the top end, it just completely falls off the table. He's at the top end, like he's the guy clinging to the edge of the table as everybody else is holding on to his foot falling off the edge of the table here. So like he's at that level, right? So everything Max just said about the strikeouts is right. It's a good matchup in terms of that. He just doesn't project all the way well for me. At 6,500 on Fanduel, I don't know if I'm going to need that savings, but he is on the board as a guy to go to in that price range if I need to get there. I would be reluctant to roster Justin Dunn in the same capacity against Houston, who just happens to be doing better, but Dunn does project a little bit better on my board for me. I might be more inclined to go up to Dane Dunning even in a matchup against the Angels. I just think you're getting a better caliber pitcher when you go there. So he costs more. He's in a tough matchup, but he projects out a little bit better than those two for me. But really, I mean, I think my day is going to be made up by primarily Glasnow, Marquez. I might mix in some Zach Greinke against Seattle in what's a good matchup, but I've talked about how I think Zach Greinke is dead, and this is just some guy off the street who doesn't actually know, throw hard, but he knows how to pitch. I don't know how he's doing it, but he still projects well for me, so I'll have some Zach Greinke here. That bottom end is just frightening.
Yeah, I would agree. Here's one guy I'm curious guys' thoughts about because he worked out for a couple slates ago. It was a Nick Pivetta chalk slate where I had talked about this guy being a pivot point. He ended up coming through against a tough Dodgers lineup. Ryan Weathers, whose stuff has been pretty good. That he did pitch 5 innings in one game. I think was starting more as an opener, but is getting a little bit more pitching depth, it seems, in some of his games. I don't love the spot against Arizona, but his stuff has been really good. He's going to regress in batting average. He's not going to keep a .083 batting average he's had so far, but a 30% K rate, a little bit under that, not giving up a ton of power. Swinging strike numbers, chase numbers are not the best, and that's what gives me concern against an Arizona team that really doesn't have a lot of dudes that strike out. The top 4 of the order is not striking out, not a single guy above a 20% K rate. But do you see anything in Ryan Weathers, Max? I'll ask you first because I feel like you're willing to take some dumpster dives along with me today on DraftKings.
Yeah, I mean, my note is very low BABIP and very low ownership. So I like the very low ownership part. He seems stretched out. He threw 90 pitches both of his last starts. And he's still listed as a relief pitcher on DraftKings, which I think will make people click over him, which I think is a good thing for his ownership. So yeah, his velocity was down his last start. Like, he's obviously a really young kid. Like, I'm not sure where he's going to end up. And the matchup isn't great, as you mentioned, versus Arizona. They definitely hit lefties much better. Yeah, so I don't hate it, but I don't think I need to go there with Marquez, Cobb, and Wood, like all in that same price range.
Terry, about you, do you feel like Ryan Weathers would be viable as a pivot, 1% ownership for him? I'm asking mostly for myself because I'm intrigued by Ryan Weathers and what he's shown so far, but there are some troubling things, I guess, that are just going to regress to normalcy here. He's only faced 54 batters over the last season.
Yeah, I like the kid. He's a high-end prospect. The Padres like him as well. They were talking about potentially sending him to the alternate site, but then Dinelson Lamet got hurt, and he's kind of probably going to just stay up and fill in that role. So it looks like he's going to stick. He's a kid. The strikeouts are way up compared to what he's been in the minors, but it's relatively small samples, a couple of short seasons there. But he was in like the low 20s, so around league average strikeout rate. So we might see him come back down in terms of the strikeouts. He projects out to league average-ish stuff in terms of the nature of the pitches, but he's got excellent command is his reputation. So he's a kid who kind of comes into the league ready to pitch right now. He just is who he is. So I don't know if we're going to see like explosive upside or like, this kid turn into the next Max Scherzer or anything, but he is good and he's already good. The issue for me is that this Diamondbacks lineup is destroying left-handed pitching this year. They have a 286 team ISO against lefties so far this year. That leads the league. A 155 WRC plus so far this year against lefties. That leads the league. 55% better creating runs. Only striking out 18.9% of the time. That's in the top, let's call it 6. 12 home runs so far this year. That's second in the league against lefties. So they've just been really, really good against left-handed pitching for whatever reason. It's not a lineup I like. I went to them and tried to stack them just in my hand-built placeholder this morning just because I knew off the top of my head and I needed to line up quickly, and I still hated it because it's just a bunch of crappy hitters. But they've been really, really good. So that would be the danger spot for me in terms of rostering Weathers.
Yep. So there you go. So that's the case to be made for pretty much all these guys. And I guess the last question I'll ask, Terry, I feel like we've covered pretty much every major pitcher. Is there anybody you're getting exposure to at all that you just want to throw in a mention to? And I feel like I'm just going to keep pointing to the mid-range with guys like Matz and Hendricks. I feel like they do have a little bit more probability to be a top pitcher relative to their ownership. But anybody else you're getting here that we just want to give a quick soundbite to?
I don't love the idea of Kyle Hendricks against Atlanta. He's a pitcher I've got some respect for. He's gotten there for people for sure in DFS in the past. It's just a tough matchup. That said, 7,700 is an SP2 on DK. I'm fine with that if you want to go there. Casey Mize could have an interesting start against Chicago. I use the word interesting because it could go one of two ways. He's either going to get lit up or he's probably going to have a pretty good start. I think it's more likely he gets lit up here. So I don't love it, but he's kind of on the board. But again, it's another one where I don't think I need to pay 6,300 for a pitcher today on FanDuel. I think there are stacks I can get to and pitchers I'd rather roster in like the 8,000 and 9,000 range.
Max, how about you? Anybody else we haven't hit on? Whether I feel like you laughed at Casey Mize right in his face. So disrespectful to poor Casey. But is he one of the guys? I feel like the Casey Mize case is not the worst, facing a lineup 6 guys that strike out above league average. And he has to be better at some point because he is a major league pitcher. So that's my case for Casey Mize.
Yeah, that's not a very glowing review right there. Yeah, I mean, I hate Hendricks. I actually want to stack Atlanta. He's giving up like barrel after barrel, 8 barrels in the last 2 starts. That's insane. Yeah, I mean, the weather's like really, really hot on that. The ball should be flying. Yeah, I mean, I could see Irvin Lots of changeups the last 2 starts. Tampa strikes out a lot. Only 7,200 or 1% owned. I could see some upside there. Inoa is interesting. Also a lot of good swinging strikes there, but I don't love the spot for them against the Cubs. Like I said, in a really good hitter's environment. Just those 2 guys I can mention. I guess, yeah, I mean, there's a case to be made for a lot of these guys, but I don't, Max should regress. His swinging strike rate isn't where it should be for the strikeouts that he's getting. And he's running really good with BABIP as well. And like I said, he's pitching in that Little League park. So yeah, like Max and Hendricks are probably bottom of my list of shots I want to take with low-owned guys.
Yeah, you know what? I feel like you brought him up, and he was a guy that I looked at earlier in the day, was kind of curious because he hasn't had the strikeout results you would think, but has had really good velocity, 96 miles per hour on his fastball, which I think shows some ability to blow guys away that he just hasn't had so far. Swing, strike rate, chase rate, the same thing. The Cubs, I think, a spot we've talked about a lot recently, very volatile, but still a team that has a good amount of strikeouts in their lineup. 5 guys that strike out above league average. So you know what? Be a guy to throw in the mix too. Let's go through it. Let's do a little money time here, and then we'll do the Awesemo Hall of Fame, Tyler. So get that ready, but I'll flip the hat. We'll do this real fast. Top 5 owned plays on DraftKings and Fanduel. I'm sure Max overjoyed to be a part of his first money time here. Wow. What a moment.
Yes.
Energy's in the air. Top 5 plays on DraftKings. Tyler Glass now 45% projected ownership on DraftKings. Of course, you can always get all the ownership projections and player projections, which are free today, but they're not free every day. Get all that stuff for yourself in addition to the top stacks tool and top pitchers tool at awesemo.com/join. Number 2 owned on DraftKings. Carlos Rodon, 35% ownership expected for him. Alex Woods, number 3 at 28%. Fernando Tatis Jr., 28% for him. And Herman Marquez, number 5 at 26%. On FanDuel, the top 5 looks like Yordan Alvarez, number 1 at 33%. Oh boy, going to talk a lot about that Houston stat coming up in the back half of the show. Kevon Biggio, number 2 at 32%. Rougned Odor popping up once again, 32%. Number 4, Tyler Glass now at 30%. And number 5, Trey Turner at 30%. Any thoughts from you, either Max? I guess I'll ask Max first here. Do you have any thoughts on the ownership here? And I guess any of these guys jump out as the bats on FanDuel, really high ownership for those guys in particular?
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much variance in batting, especially this early in the year where we don't have as many stats to go back on. So my take on this is just go under the super chalky batters. Pitching, we can at least trust a little bit. We have a lot of good pitching data that stabilizes a lot faster with a lot of pitches thrown already. So trust the pitching projections a lot more than you trust the hitting projections.
Terry, how about you? Do you want to get your 32% Rougned Odor today after this has been a cause to celebrate on the show this week of not playing Rougned Odor?
Stop rostering terrible hitters just because yeah, it's I don't want that. He ended up hitting cleanup. We were talking about him in the 9 hole the other day. He ended up hitting cleanup. It didn't matter. This is one of the worst hitters in baseball over the last few years. He does get a little power, but he struggles with contact. He's not a good hitter. I don't care if he's hitting cleanup. To me, it's more of a hole in the Yankee stack than it is a guy with a lot of appeal. I know the prices on the Yankees are right, and it's just because of the ownership. Like if these guys were coming off, especially at these prices at half this ownership, I'd be excited about it. Don't get me wrong. It's just about the ownership. So that's the caveat there. Don't roster terrible hitters just because they're Yankees when they're highly owned.
There goes an important corollary to put into your DFS process. And let's do the Awesemo Hall of Fame to give some shout outs to people who've been doing well and all the various sports we have at Awesemo. The first one up, Be Great 36 picked up a $100K win for himself yesterday in the NBA shot machine. So kudos to him. I think he only had 50 entries in that one too. Not the most ideal approach normally, but you can't argue with the results with that big win for him. Number 2 on here, we got Be Great again. Okay, there's more Be Great on the slides. We got Jake Mears again coming up here, 10K win. Thanks Awesemo. Won 100K 2 months ago, but this time he's got that Awesemo avatar. Nice win for him in the baseball streets on Saturday. Another winner here, another Hall of Fame indoctrination. I guess Jake Mears gets 2 slides. Good for Jake Mears, continuing to make me read his name out loud. We also got Massberry 15 here, and you could be part of this Hall of Fame yourself. Don't even need gigantic wins. $750 here. You beat enough people. You beat the top tournament with 5,000 people, finish in the top 3. You can win a free month of Awesemo Plus if you have that Awesemo avatar. So it's not all gigantic wins all all the wins you guys got out there matter to us. And our last one here, Kenpachi Zaraki, saying only playing NASCAR for about a month, got his first win this weekend thanks to everything Awesemo.com provides. Finished first, third, and 14th, dominating NASCAR. So another sport you can play for yourself. Honestly, another sport you don't even have to watch. Just look at the tools on there, the top driver's tool in particular, and make your lineup. So shout out to the new members of the Hall of Fame. And Terry, you and I, once again, just left down the cold. Max, you too now. We need to get our screenshots on here. We're not Hall of Fame members. It's embarrassing, honestly.
Hey, it leaves us in good company. Don Mattingly's in the group with us, these non-Hall of Famers that deserve it. So we're in good company. No worries.
Yeah, there you go. So that's lots of hope for all of us here. And make sure to tag at Awesemo HOF if you do have any wins to get the recognition you deserve, whether it be on this show or just in terms of those free months and all of that. Let's keep talking about the top stacks here and smash that like button, guys. We appreciate it a bunch for the MLB shows in particular. It's a competitive world out there right now with NBA going on, PGA, MMA, all the other sports out there. MLB sometimes doesn't get the love. So make sure you are always in the like button when you're watching an Awesemo MLB show, because we appreciate it a bunch and it helps us keep everything at bay as the now top DFS site on the YouTube, all of YouTube right now. So woo, good for us. Let's talk about top stacks though. We got the Yankees looking like number one right now on both FanDuel. Let me make sure I have to get the FanDuel numbers in here, but on DraftKings looking like the number one on FanDuel as well. Also number one, 11% chance of being the top stack on FanDuel, 12% on DraftKings. More ownership than expected, Terry. And this has been the recurring theme of the Yankees. They're playing in Baltimore. Everybody wants to play the Yankees, and the stack got there yesterday. I think a weird configuration of the stack maybe, but it gets some power going. So how are you feeling about the Yankees once again, the same spot we have talked about every single day this week?
Yeah, so the spot's going to be a little bit different because they're probably going to be without Aaron Judge tonight, probably for the foreseeable future. He's dealing with some lingering injuries. Hopefully he avoids the IL, but he's probably not going to be in the lineup tonight unless they confirmed otherwise, and I didn't see it. But we do still have quality bats up and down. I mean, it is the Yankees lineup. They've just been struggling mightily. We know that's why the prices are down. We know that's why the ownership is up, because the prices are down. So I think there's still reason to get to these guys if you can figure out how to put them together with other teams that aren't going to be as highly owned. It's just a real trick to pull. You did see at the top of the boards, at least early on last night, some of the lineups that were put together, but they end up falling off because they're just put together with weak teams, bad stacks. So it's just difficult to roster these guys. Names that I like in the order with low ownership, I like Aaron Hicks with low ownership, 3.9% on FanDuel. I'll give that one away. Higher on DK, but it's in range. Clint Frazier, similar story. Gary Sanchez. So it's about the bottom of the lineup for me. And then we're talking about sacrificing plate appearances deliberately to get the guys who are still fairly highly owned, not the best hitters on the team. I don't know. It's a slippery slope once we start getting into how we can roster these guys. They're probably just better spots on such a big slate, even though they project well, even though they're so low cost.
Max, how are you feeling here? It's not as big of a slate as some of the ones we've had this week where the Yankees were shockingly overowned, but still a 10-gamer where you can find some ways to get different. Are you willing to get different and not play any Yankees, or are you playing some? How are you handling it?
Paid for the ownership for me. Yeah, it's just they're just way overowned. Like, I feel like they should be around 10%, and they're coming in double that. The prices are right. They're way too cheap for who they are as players, like on the back of their baseball cards, which they'll eventually get to. It's not like they just figured out that they're not going to hit for the rest of the year. They'll hit. I kind of like Kramer here, or Kramer. I'm just going to call him Cosmo Kramer for the rest of this. Show. Yeah. So yeah, I think he's a pretty good pitcher. Like, he's not as bad as his stats indicate. For he had maybe one or two rough starts, but really figured it out in the last two starts. Like I said, throwing more curveballs, which is a key for him. Without Judge in this lineup, that takes a lot of the ability to turn the lineup over and get more at bats and really make it a stack that you can't fade. So yeah, we're going to probably get a cheaper replacement for Judge, but that doesn't make the stack better. It makes the stack worse. So yeah, and I mean, hopefully Higashioka keeps playing well. I think he's going to be getting more starts over Gary. Maybe Gary will be the DH now that Judge will be sitting. I'm not sure the way they're going to go with that, but yeah, just way too overowned of a stack for me. And we have a lot of weak pitchers in really nice hitting environments on the slate that we can roster players against.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And the Yankees just one of the teams that just end up over-owned every day. And if they are over-owned, probably a good idea to get away because it is a lot of ownership again, though not quite as much as the last few days, and could come down a little bit, I guess, with Judge. So watch the ownership throughout the day and watch the top stacks tool as well. Another top stack today, though, looks like it'll be the Padres, kind of the same configuration we've had recently, where the Yankees have been the number one by a decent margin. The Padres not too far behind. 4.8 implied runs going against Taylor Widener, and Widener, for the most part, not the most impressive pitcher, but about a league average strikeout rate, a little under that, 22% K rate for him, getting up a 5% home run rate. The Padres, though, do have a good amount of power, have hit righties pretty well over the last season and change, and certainly the top six of the order all looks pretty good. So, Max, how are you feeling about them here? They do look a bit over-owned according to the top stacks tool, but not as egregiously so compared to the Yankees.
Yeah, this is my favorite stat. What I hate about Widener is 60% hard hits, 44% hard hits, 40% hard hits, 46% hard hits. The last 4 starts. His StatCast numbers, 4 barrels, 2 barrels, 2 barrels. Just a ton of hard hits, tons of barrels, facing a ton of power on the Padres lineup. And this park plays really small when the roof is open, and which it's going to be. And it's like 80 degrees in Arizona. I just love the fact that this stack is half the ownership of the Yankees and way more upside for me.
Terry, how are you feeling about the Padres here, where they are going to be just a little bit over-owned on Fanduel, it looks like, but still definitely the number 2 stack by a pretty good margin on whatever site people are playing on today?
Yeah, and it's one of those situations where all of that ownership is going into 3 hitters right now. It's Fernando Tatis, Manny Machado, and Will Myers soaking up most of that ownership. You can roster hitters like Trent Grisham, Eric Hosmer in this spot. You can get Jake Cronenworth. I'll even go to Jurickson Profar here. So up and down this lineup, there are plenty of ways to put this together in unique combinations. The prices are right on everybody. The prices are right on the top end stars as well. Manny Machado might be cheap at 34, 49 on DK. And then you're paying up for Tatis, but he's appropriately priced for his ridiculous talent. He's the most owned guy. So put some of the other lesser owned hitters together with these guys and fire away. Absolutely. Great matchup against Taylor Widener. To Max's point, yeah, he's sitting 25th percentile in barrels allowed, 14th percentile in xERA, 22nd percentile in hard hit rate. Fire away. This is a great spot for Padres, one of the better offenses in baseball.
Also, did you guys see the Oakland lineup that came out? I mean, this might just be me not knowing my 8 hitters that well, but the guy they have in at the 8 hole is Vimael Machine, which seems like a creative player name that doesn't even make sense. Like the game just was like, oh, this glitched out. We just made this name.
He's actually in the DK Price player pool, which is amazing to me. Like, I've never heard of this guy.
Yeah, there he is.
He's a 0.015 ISO in 68 at-bats against the righty, so perhaps not worth playing a lot of Vimael Machine, but he is in at the 8 hole for Oakland today, so keep that in mind if you're updating your lineups. In the chat, looks like we got Yamaval talking about the game of the day being Tampa Bay and Oakland. People also intrigued by going to Randy Arozarena, Butthole Jenkins, one of our regulars in the chat. It's a silly sentence to say out loud. Butthole Jenkins, one of the luminaries in the YouTube chat, talking about Randy Arozarena, and it is an interesting spot for him going against Cole Irvin because Arozarena has mashed righties and Cole Irvin has not had a lot. And I know we talked about him in our cheap pitcher rundown, but Max, do you get any raised stacks at all? Not the highest probability, looking a bit over-owned, but do you have a decent chance of being a value stack today?
Yeah, I would just play one-offs for me. Just because this isn't like when the weather gets warm everywhere, this is one of the worst parks that you want to roster your hitters in. It's not a good hitting park. And I mean, Arozarena is just way too cheap at 4.4K for who he is. So yeah, I get that as a one-off play for sure. I just don't think I want to roster a stack.
Terry, are you feeling the same way here? Not trying to stack these guys up, even if I think you can make the case Manuel Margot going to be shockingly high owned because he's cheap hitting or projected to be hitting in the 2 hole for Tampa Bay. But how are you feeling about them as a stack, Terry?
That is shockingly high DraftKings ownership for Manny Margot. Manny Margot, comparatively, he's at 1.5% owned on FanDuel. So I like him a lot better over there. I can get to some stacks of these guys on FanDuel. I like the matchup here. Arozarena was a nice number in my home run model, under 10% owned on FanDuel. I can get there. They're probably better, like Max was saying, as one-offs. I can get to, just deploy Arozarena where I can for 3,400. I don't mind doing the same with Austin Meadows at 3,000 if he's in the lineup lefty. Even like Mike Brasso has some upside in a good matchup here. Not owned at all. You can deploy him at second and third for only 2,900 on FanDuel. 3,400 at the same positions on DK. So if you're looking for a value bet, maybe you skip over Manny Margot and go to one of these other guys on the DK slate that are similarly priced, have similar upside. But yeah, it's a good source of one-offs. I like the matchup here against Cole Irvin.
They do have the highest probability of being the top value stack on the slate. So that's sort of the main appeal of Tampa Bay, is if you are paying up to get, ironically, I guess, to their pitcher, you can also be, just getting the value stack in their 12% chance of them being a top value stack on DraftKings. Nobody else even in double digits. So that's their main value. In terms of the upside, though, do look a little bit low in terms of the top stack probability from Awesemo, only a 3.2% chance of being the top stack today. A team that's pretty high, which I guess people may be happy with if you went against Max Scherzer yesterday, but Toronto projecting as the number 3 overall stack on the day. And it does seem for them, they're going to be actually, where am I going here? I'm trying to pull out their numbers. And for some reason, I don't put my full team names in here, and it sometimes throws me for a loop. Vladimir Guerrero, though, not picking up a lot of ownership, his price tag up quite a bit, but it does seem on DraftKings, tons of ownership going to George Springer, going to Kevon Biggio. We talked about in the top 5 owned plays on Fanduel as well. Rowdy Tellez also picking up a lot of ownership going against Eric Fede. And Max, I'll ask you, because Fede, to me, he's not a good pitcher by any stretch, but the one thing he does well is keeps the ball down, a 27% fly ball rate over the last season and change. That's pretty much the same numbers for him since 2019. Are you willing to go to Toronto today, coming off of the day where they shelled a much better pitcher, but it does seem like people are going to be there, perhaps chasing that big day of yesterday?
Yeah, the hitting environment is just really good, and Fede's not a good pitcher. He's been unreal versus righties in a really small sample in this particular season. I think I stacked twice against him this year and came up with pretty much nothing. So hasn't worked out for me. I think I am going to have some Toronto stacks. The 37.5% hard contact rate versus righties here does give me a little bit of confidence. And just the fact that you don't really need to hit it that hard to get it out here. I think Toronto is going to come a little bit over-owned just because of yesterday. But still, just because the Yankees are taking up 20% of the ownership, they're not going to be as high owned as Toronto should be, I feel like. So, yeah, I like the stack. Rowdy Tellez is my boy. He's so unlucky this year so far. His StatCast numbers are just saying a different story, where he's going to end up running into a bunch of home runs at some point this year, and it might as well be here.
Yeah, Rowdy Tellez certainly had the power going back to 2019 to 210 ISO versus righties and 5% home run rate, a little bit above that. So good numbers for Rowdy Tellez, but a lot of ownership going his way. Terry, how are you feeling about Toronto here, where they are going to be, looks like a little bit more owned on DraftKings, but still pretty decently represented on FanDuel as well?
Yeah, I think I'm going to have some bats on both sides of this game. I don't love the ownership on FanDuel, but I think they're good ways to put it together, where I can get to a Randall Grichuk, a Marcus Semien, a Lourdes Gurriel down the bottom of the lineup and spare some of the ownership from the guys at the top. Love that Vlad is going under-owned despite his monster game from last night. Wish I had had more of it last night, and he'll probably go 0 for tonight when he's in my lineups. But, I'll definitely be getting to that. I think it's a great matchup. Fede's only around a 5% swinging strike guy, 29th percentile in barrels so far this year, 6th percentile in whiff rate this year, hard hit rate, 52nd percentile. So he's gotten a little bit lucky in terms of the hard hit he's allowed. He's normally, with that number of barrels, you would see a little bit more of a hard hit rate. So I think he's a targetable pitcher. I've done the same as Max. I've targeted him a couple times, come up empty, but I think I'm going to go right back there with some of these bats if I can figure out the right way to do it. And then on the other side, the Nats are profiling pretty well against Steven Matz here. So Matz isn't going to be owned. I was hoping he would get popular on FanDuel and I could target him with bats, but I think I'll still throw some of at least the top end of the bats against him with, Trey Turner, Josh Harrison, Ryan Zimmerman, Starlin Castro up there.
Targeting Mats with bats, one of my favorite lines in a children's book that I wrote about Major League Baseball. But yeah, it does seem like a pretty good spot overall for Toronto, even though they do look a bit overowned. Very high implied total for them today, 5.4 implied runs, one of the best marks on the slate. Another team that's going to pop up on FanDuel being a top stack in particular, though they're behind a few more teams on DraftKings. But Houston, we talked about them earlier going against Justin Dunn. Justin Dunn looking pretty lucky so far with his results, even though he's only had a 20% K rate. He somehow has a 184 batting average despite a 6.2 xFIP. So those numbers for Dunn, as we talked about throughout the show, seem likely to take an uptick. Dunn also killed by base stealers from both sides of the plate, giving up a 2.2 steals per one for the rest of the league. I forget what the weighted stolen base number is supposed to be, but either way, it's bad for Justin Dunn all across the board here. And going against Houston, Terry, does seem the ownership's going to be pretty high for Yordan Alvarez, but the rest of the stack maybe not as highly owned as it would seem. How are you feeling about Houston here going against Dunn, and a tough park too? So something to keep in mind there as well.
Yeah, Houston's it's got to be difficult to put this stack together on DK with the prices. Basically, everybody that you want to get to is over 5,000. So it's a little bit tough to put them all together and, not have to include like a Miles Straw in there and sacrifice kind of a spot in your lineup unless he steals a few bags, which he could have upside for today, given those steal numbers against Justin Dunn. Part of what Justin Dunn is struggling with is walks 16.9% in his 14 innings this year, 15.7% walk rate last year in 45 innings, only 6 innings the year before that, but it was 30%. So he's just not good at keeping guys off base. Going to be plenty of opportunity for Houston here. Even if they don't hit the ball out of the yard, they could hit doubles and steal bases and just circle the bags all day long against this kid. So I like the spot a lot for Houston. The prices are more affordable on FanDuel, but the ownership is up because of it. But there are a few holes in the ownership where you can exploit like a under 5% ownership on Carlos Correa, on Yuli Gurriel. So you can get to some of these guys. Jose Altuve at the top of the lineup, under 10% ownership. So you can put the stack together a little bit better on FanDuel. But the core bats are a little highly owned. Yordan Alvarez in particular, he was exploding through the top of my home run model for the day, but he's going to be very highly owned at 30%. So it would temper my expectations for him as a one-off.
Max, how are you feeling about Houston here, given the fact that Dunn is just not a great pitcher and fits all the criteria you talked about, a guy you'd expect to regress to a bit of a worse performance number? And I guess, again, the one downgrade here being the fact that they are playing at Houston. The park factors are not the best there, but are you willing to get heavy on Houston today? I feel like you mentioned some pay up to be contrarian stacks, and this seems like that'd be the case more on DraftKings and FanDuel.
Yeah, so the reason that I like them is because they're expensive. Like, you can't really roster Glasnow and or Rodon with them. So that means you can be a little bit different going with 7K pitchers and avoid 60% of the ownership. Mm-hmm. So I feel like that's why they're going to come in under owned. They definitely have just as much as upside as any other stack on the slate. The stolen bases make it even more appealing. And it seems like they're just hitting better at home this year. The garbage cans must be back. I'm not sure. But, the righties in the stack are going to be aiming at the Crawford boxes as well. So not a bad thing for them.
Yeah, whatever it means they're getting things done, it seems, at a 5.1 implied run total for Houston. One of the better marks on the slate as well. So definitely some reason to go there, even with the park factors going against them. Max, any other high price stacks that you're looking at? Because I think you said there were a few that you were targeting perhaps being under owned. And I guess there are a few that may jump out. Very high priced White Sox stack is what I'm looking at right now against Casey Mize. But what are the high price stacks you're looking at the most?
Yeah, the White Sox were down on the list for me just because of the weather. 46 degrees in Chicago, brutally cold. So I think my favorite one that we didn't mention yet is Atlanta, going against Hendricks, who I think is dusty and washed. Just a great lineup here with 80-degree weather. I just love the home run power in this Atlanta stack.
Terry, are you into Atlanta at all, going against Kyle Hendricks, who I know you didn't have the most esteem for as a pitching option today, but he has been pitching deep into games, not getting a lot of strikeouts, mostly limiting damage pretty well, just a 1.1 whip going back to 2019.
Yeah, I would be more on the Atlanta side. Gun to my head, if I had to pick one, it would definitely be these Atlanta bats. They hit right-handed pitching pretty well, hit it for power as well. I like 1 through 6 in this lineup. I am not a big Guillermo Heredia guy, but he came through the other day, and he only cost 29 on FanDuel, 31 on DK. So he makes things work. Don't sleep on Alex Jackson if you're playing on DK as a catcher option. Only 2,600. Big time power bat, has not come through at the major league level at all. Big time, 3 true outcomes type of a kid. But if he gets into one, it could go, and nobody's going to be on him as a catcher on DK where you have to play one. So that could be a little sneaky bottom of the lineup for the Braves there. And then the other team that I like that I was going to bring up is the Phillies. I don't think we've talked about the Phillies. Looks to me like they're going pretty under-owned for very fair prices on FanDuel. Pretty similar story, higher prices relatively on DK, but nobody's really going here, which makes them really interesting in a matchup against Johan Oviedo, who 23.5% strikeout rate this year, only 14.3% over 24 innings last year, no sample the year before, 5.83 xFIP last year. I think this is a targetable spot for these bats. I'm not getting monster power numbers, but I'm getting like average power numbers from 1 through 6 at least. If you want to throw Odubel or Herrera in there, fine. And I'm getting excellent projection numbers on them. So I really like Philly here, assuming this game.
Vince Velasquez can hit home runs too, guys. I don't want to throw that out there. They won't do anything for you, but he got some power in a way that you wouldn't expect old Vince Velasquez to have at pitcher. League average home run rate. Max, how are you feeling about the Phillies? Because I was actually going to ask about them next because they are one of the most under-owned teams. It looks like according to the top stacks tool. And Terry just made the case, so I won't repeat it. But how are you feeling about the Phillies today going against Oviedo?
I actually don't think Oviedo is that bad. We had a small sample last year, but his fastball velocity is up to 96.5. This year, it was in the 94s last year. This plate discipline stuff looks really good. 16.9% swinging strike rate in his first start. The StatCast numbers, 5 hard hit balls in 11 events, 1 barrel last start. This is the weather game as well. Like, I'm not sure if Philly stack is just going to make it there for me today.
Yeah, not the highest run total for Philly, but the top stacks tool does say it's worth getting some exposure. So maybe a team to take a leap of faith with, even though I agree that they don't look fantastic to me. And Oviedo seems to have more overpowering stuff than he's shown, but it's definitely not been the case so far. Any flyer stacks for you, Terry? Any low-owned ones that we haven't hit on at all? That I know you mentioned Philly being one that we hadn't talked about, but they are still a decent probability one. Any 1% top stack flyers, or I guess value stacks that you're targeting in particular on FanDuel?
Just pulling up the top stacks tool to try and help me answer that question. Looks like we're getting a nice little leverage score on the Baltimore Orioles coming back against Domingo Germán, which wasn't one I really thought about. But in terms of a reasonable probability, but down the board a little bit sneaky, not getting much ownership, decent little value score on them. So I guess based on that, if we're going off of the tool there, that makes some sense to me. And like I said, there are some bats in that lineup. I don't like it as much nearly without Santander in it, but there's still, Trey Mancini is a good bat. DJ Stewart, sneaky power. Mike Franco, sneaky power. Austin Hayes is a young kid I like. Ryan Mountcastle is a young kid I like. So there are bats up and down. I don't love getting to Pedro Severino, Freddie Galvis, Rio Ruiz, even Cedric Mullins, who went double dong earlier in the week. I think is more slap hitter, speedy kind of guy. Maybe he's got a little bit of pop that I've been underrating, but I don't think he's a 2 home run threat most nights. But nobody's going to be on these guys. Decent spot. Domingo Germán had a nice year in 2019, 25.8% strikeout rate in 143 innings. But I don't know. He was not a high-profile kid coming in. He just kind of came out of nowhere, filled that role for the Yanks that year. It was a nice story. Then had his issues, was out of baseball last year. I don't fully trust that he's back or ever was going to be a high-end pitcher to begin with. So I think you could throw some Orioles at him. I don't hate it.
Max, how are you feeling about that here? Because Germán has looked very bad in the smaller term sample size, maybe hurt his hand with all the domestic violence he's been doing. And now it does seem like you could maybe argue he's due for some positive regression looking at the longer term sample size. So how are you feeling about the Baltimore stack going against him?
Yeah, his velocity is fluctuating, which is a concern. Was down to 92 last start from 94 to begin the year. So that's never fun. The ground ball rate went up. The xFIP looked really nice the last couple starts. Yeah, it's like, for me, the Orioles, nice hitting environment. Sure, like, I guess I could go there. But I really think the Nats is the spot where I would go for really low ownership against Mats. Like we were saying, the park is great. And Mats has been really lucky so far this year. So I really think that his numbers are going to regress. Might as well regress right here.
All right, we got about a minute here before we jump off, and then tune into the tip-off right after this because I will be on there doing the usual shtick we do. But make sure to follow at DigitalB21, follow at DFS Max, and follow at Chris Spags. And let's close this out with one final takeaway, I guess, for everybody out there. Let's do our personal favorite stack and our personal favorite pitcher, and let's just go in a circle here. And I'll let Terry go first. So just give me a quick little, no logic behind it you have to give. Just give me who those guys are for the top stack and your top pitcher.
Oh, crap. I was not ready for you to go to me first.
Surprise.
I'll throw the Phillies in there. What the hell? I'll throw the Phillies in there since they're that low-owned oddball that I brought up. I kind of like it. And then I'll take Herman Marquez off the top of the pile for the pitcher.
All right, Max, how about you? Favorite stack and favorite pitcher?
I'll go Alex Wood in Atlanta.
I will also go Alex Wood, and I will go to the Giants. I'm intrigued by the Giants in the spot against Marquez. These guys have made me fear that pick right now, but it's one in front of me as I'm looking at the screen. So that's what I'm going to go with here. Hit that like button, guys. Subscribe to the channel. Make sure to follow at Awesemo_com. Check the pin tweet as well. I believe we have a giveaway going for the NFL draft right now. So make sure you are taking part in that. We appreciate all you guys for watching. Tune in tomorrow. It'll be Aiton taking home Thursday and Friday, one of our new hosts on the channel. So show him some love. Tune in tomorrow, the MLB Deeper Dive. We appreciate you guys, and we'll see you guys again soon. Good luck.